Hello everyone, welcome to this Age of Alchemy battle report, where today we are actually going to be doing a little bit of a narrative style story, where the two groups we have for the Council of the Cold Knight and the Alchemist Hunters. So we have an Alchemist Hunter here, and then we have a group of sort of collective folk rabble that sort of joined up with him to try and take down this alchemist. Because this alchemist essentially, because it is Council of the Cold Knight, is a sort of a tax collector sort of thing, or coming to basically try and squeeze money out of the locals. However, they have managed to hire a hunter, and the hunter and them are going to try and drive them out. This means that today we are actually going to be playing the Vendetta scenario, which is the one where the groups are trying to remove the opposing group's leader, or like alchemist and hunter, while keeping their own one alive, which seems appropriate for this, as they're sort of trying to drive each other out of this area. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to show you the groups, we're then going to show you the roles for Alchemy and how the Doctrines work for the Hunter, and then we're going to deploy and play the game. For the Council of the Cold Knight, in the front row we have an Alchemist with basic weapon, we have an Apprentice with basic weapon, a Marksperson with bow and basic weapon, and then the back row we have an ex-soldier with 2 basic weapons, a noble with crossbow and basic weapon, a local hero with basic weapon and bow, and a skirmisher with throwing daggers or throwing knives and a dagger. As for the other group, led by the Alchemist Hunter, we have the Hunter himself with a great weapon, 1, 2, 3 Brawlers, who just have their fists. We have a Marksperson, 2 Markspersons actually with crossbow, but one has a basic weapon, one has a dagger. We then have a thief with bow and dagger. We have a cultist with a bludgeon, this sort of small 2-handed axe he's got here. And on the very end, we have 2 mercenaries who have sword or basic weapon and shield each. As this is a standalone game, my opponent is going to roll 6 concoctions for their alchemist. Now they've got 2 number 1s, which are ones that they can change. However, they've also got 2 number 5s and 2 number 4s. So what I'll do is I will let my opponent decide what ones they want to change those number 1s into, and then we'll quickly come back. As we can see, my opponent has gone for a frost trap, a numbing icicle, and rolled 2 of the ice walls and 2 of the glacial shields. As for the Alchemist Hunter, as we're treating this as a bit of a showcase game, myself and my opponent have agreed that we're actually just going to do 1 each of the 6 doctrines available to them. Now, unlike alchemists, they don't have a special number that they're allowed to re-roll, but it does mean that instead of them who have 5 and a number they can pick from, they actually have 6 different doctrines which behave in the same way as concoctions. But we will see how they play out throughout the game. With that, we have deployed both of the forces. So on my side over here, I won the roll off and chose to deploy on this side. I've actually gone for a very offensive line here because I know I need to get to my opponent's alchemist. As for my opponent, they've gone for a similar sort of thing. They've just got 6 of their models arrayed over here, but then also they've put their local hero hiding in this building over there. So with that, we are actually going to go straight into turn 1, and we will see what happens. Turn 1, initiative phase, my opponent rolls a 1, I roll a 2, so I'll be going first and they'll go second with a reaction token. Just as we come to the last bit of my half of the movement phase, I was about to move this thief, but my opponent has decided all the way over here that their local hero is going to take a snapshot at them before I move. Now we've worked out that this wall in the way, and because of the range, it's going to be 3 down to a 6 to hit, which my opponent rolls, so roll to see what they get. So they get a wound on me, damage 3 against resistance 3. With that, after that surprisingly effective reaction, we actually come to the end of the turn 1 movement phase. So my opponent has done a similar thing in that they've sort of come up here with this main group at the front, but they have also moved their alchemist to the back here to keep them out of the way. And then the local hero is staying over there in the building because he's reacted. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop into the shooting phase and we will see where we go from there. To start off with, I'm going to fire this model here, this Marksperson with a crossbow, into my opponent's Apprentice. Now I've moved, so that takes it from a 3 to a 5 with the crossbow, and then it's a 6 for the cover. So I'm going to roll, see what happens. Ooh, okay, that was surprising. Next we're going to roll for damage. Damage 4 against resistance 3. So that becomes a single wound on my opponent's Apprentice. To round off, because none of my other shooting models are actually able to draw line of sight or be in range to anyone they can hit, I am going to use the Tome of Speed from my Hunter. Now the way Doctrines work is that they are similar to concoctions, however all of them are buffs to a model, such as allowing them to make moves out of sequence, to have +1 to their various stats, or to automatically disengage from combat, regain wounds. There's quite a few things, but they are literally all buffs and heals to other models. In the case of the Tome of Speed, it's picking a friendly model within 6, which is this mercenary here, rolling a dice, which I get not a 1, I need a 2+. This model may now make a 6-inch move out of sequence, so they're going to go about ½ an inch to there, hop over that, and then move a further 2.5 inches, like that, on the other side. So to start my opponent's part of the shooting phase, this model here is going to fire into this model. So they're looking at a... They'd be looking at a 4 because they've moved and they're not within 4 inches. So that's not a hit. Next, my opponent's local hero who reacted is going to take a shot all the way over at this Brawler. Now, they can see them, however, they have the penalty for having already done something in the movement phase, the snapshot, long range, and they're going to get soft cover from some of these obstacles in the way. It does mean they can hit on a 6, however. No, they don't. Last bit of regular shooting before we go on to the concoctions for my opponent. This Skirmisher here is going to throw all 3 knives into this model here. None of which hit.
Ouch!
So next my opponent is going to place an ice wall here, using the number 4, one of the number 4s that they have, and it's coming from their Apprentice. So all they need to do is roll a 2+ and they can place it there, which they do. So what we're going to do is just quickly take the wall and that there. Here's something you don't see very often. In turn 1 we actually have a combat over here. So I'm going to move in my mercenary like that, around and behind my opponent, because I can make that full move. I have 1 attack with my basic weapon hitting on a 4. I hit, rolling to wound on a damage 3, resistance 3, so 4, 5, 6. No, and I don't get to reroll that because it's only the hits I get to roll. My opponent's the same, so basic weapon, hits, roll to wound. Gets a single wound, but I have a shield, so I can ignore this on a 5 or 6, which I don't, and I run away on a 3+, which I do. So I'm going to mark myself up, and then I'm going to go, well, I'm not going within an inch of him, I'm going to use my 2-inch move to shuffle over that way. So my opponent now gets to roll and see where they go. 2 inches. And with that, my opponent has moved themselves just there. My opponent has decided for their half of the combat phase, again, we're going to have 2 charges in the first turn. They are going to run round, and I think they're going to charge me in such a way that they can force me back. So they're going to charge me from behind like so as well. So they have 1 attack hitting on a 4, which does, rolling to wound, which also does, so I'm going to try and ignore that with my shield, which this time I do. So I'm going to roll to hit with my basic weapon, which I do, but I don't get a wound, however my opponent charged, and I get to run away, which is going to be 2 inches. I will run away like that. And then my opponent's going to roll a 4, and probably back away at this point, I'm guessing. Yeah, 4 inches will easily get them to there. With that, we come to the end of turn 1, where we got to see moving, shooting, and surprisingly, combat. So there's a couple of smattering of wounds here and there, but what we're going to do is finish up this turn and head on into turn 2. Start off turn 2, it's initiative time, so my opponent's going to roll. Oh no, they wanted me to roll first. I get a 5, I'll bring that back somewhere into the camera. They get a 2, so again, I'll be going first and they'll go second with a reaction token. Now we've come to the end of the movement phase for turn 2, there was no reactions. As we can see, my entire force is sort of clumped up all on this side as much as it can. My opponents sort of come to meet me with some of their force, leaving their Alchemist at the back and also their local hero who's just moved up on the side here. So what we're going to do is head on into the shooting phase and we will see what happens. First bit of shooting from myself. this Marksperson into this Marksperson. This here is not actually high enough to grant them cover, so it's just going to be the move penalty, which puts me on a 5 to hit, which I don't get. Next, my Marksperson with crossbow, who has moved up here, is going to fire over at this guy because, or this local hero, because it will be a 6 to hit with the cover and the move. Once again, he gets it. Let's see if I can wound that hero. I can't. So my thief over here, who needs a 6 to hit the local hero because of movement and the soft cover, is going to try a lucky shot and see what happens. Close, but unfortunately not enough. For this turn, the doctrine I'm going to use is the Warrior's Prayer, which is number 5, and it will go onto this brawler here. So on a 2+, I'll roll that again. Awesome. So I don't get it, but if I did, it would have given him +1 damage to all of his attacks for the rest of the turn. So my opponent's first bit of shooting is going to be noble, down into my hunter down here. So let's see what they get. I'm looking for a 4. Unfortunately, they miss. For my opponent's concoction in this turn, they are going to use the number 2 frost trap from the Apprentice over here, and they're going to put it into this point here. Now, if it goes off on a 2+, let's see what they roll. It does. So what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly rearrange the models and we'll show you the trap. And that is the trap laid out. So when those models move or any model moves through it, they are potentially going to take damage. Next bit of shooting, my opponent's Marksperson is going to have a 2 to hit on my mercenary here because they haven't moved and they are within 4 inches. So we're looking at a 2+ followed with a reroll if they need it. So they have hit, looking to wound, damage 3, resistance 3, which they don't. Next, my opponent's Skirmisher is going to start throwing knives into my model here. So they are looking at a 2 as well without a reroll, but they're looking at a 2 to hit because again they haven't moved and they are within super short range. First one gets a hit, roll to wound. It doesn't wound, so second one hits, roll into wound, we'll roll that again. So the second one wounds, but I ignore it, and the third one gets a hit. Ooh, it gets a critical, but I have my shield, and I don't pass either of them, so that is that model removed. Next, and I think actually the last bit of shooting from my opponent, is going to be local hero, who's going to fire all the way over into my thief. Oddly enough, also needing a 6 because of the move and hard cover. No, and he doesn't get any rerolls because he's not a Marksperson. So for the first bit of combat from myself, this brawler is going to jump up here and get into contact with my opponent's noble. Now, I get 2 attacks from the brawler. Oh no, actually good point. First thing we need to do I take a wound from this on a 5+? No, I don't. So we will do the attacks, 2 hitting on a 3 with the fists. Roll that again. Okay, both hit. However, due to it being damage 2 against resistance 4, I am looking for 6s here. No, ooh, close, but I could have done with that Warrior's Prayer. My opponent gets to attack back, 1 attack, which hits. Roll into wound, damage 4 against resistance 3. Ooh, they get a critical, and I have a potential chance to fall, which I don't, but do I disengage from combat? I don't either, so my opponent gets to attack me back again with my 1 wound remaining, where they don't hit. I don't run away, so they're going to have to try again. To hit, roll to wound, and that is me removed from play. So they now get to roll a d6 and see where they go. And they've rolled a 4. So my opponent has decided with the 4 that they rolled, they're just going to go into the opposite corner of the building. So my opponent has decided with their 4-inch movement that they got from that, they're going to actually move themselves up to here. So we just measured it up that they can get to there. So my opponent has decided when it comes to their charge into combat, because I finished mine, they're actually going to have their noble charge over in like so. So that's 1 attack hitting on a 3 for the noble, which it does. Roll into wound, damage 4, resistance 3, which also it does. So I take a wound, and then I attack back, which I don't. Do I run away? I have quite a high chance of doing that. So I'm going to back away to there, and then my opponent's going to get to roll a dice and go 2 inches. So they can go 2 inches back into the corner. Okay. With that, we come to the end of turn 2, so we're just going to head into turn 3, where I have to start making determination rolls. Start of turn 3, I actually have to make a determination roll, which I pass so I don't lose any models. Yay! Next, we're going to roll for initiative for turn 2. My opponent rolls a 1, I roll a 4, so again, I'll be going first and my opponent gets 1 reaction token. As we come up to the end of the movement phase, I was going to move my Cultist here, which has the bludgeon. My opponent's going to roll to see if he takes a wound, which he doesn't, so he's just going to continue on his way and go and head into this building. With that, we have come to the end of turn 3's movement phase. So as we can see, my opponent has actually started moving back to try and keep their Alchemist covered, while I've tried to push around again through the middle and on the sides to just try and bear down on the Alchemist and see what happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to head on into the shooting phase and see how that goes. So the first shot I'm going to do is my Marksperson into my opponent's Noble. So I'm looking at a 2 to hit because I haven't moved and I'm within super short range. That's a hit. Rolling to wound, damage 4, resistance 4. No, so no wound there. Next, my Thief is within 4 inches of this model here, but he has moved and they are in cover, so I'm only ignoring one of those penalties, which will take my 4 to hit to a 5 to hit. No, he doesn't get a shot. Next, my crossbow Marksperson here is actually going to take a shot, and it's just manages to be blocked by this for soft cover, but not blocked by this for hard cover, so I can make it, but it will be on a 6. No. Next for the, or actually last in this case for the Doctrines, I'm going to use the Book of Blessings from my Hunter onto this Cultist here. So let's see if it goes off. It does. So that means that for the rest of this turn and the next turn, anytime that model takes a wound on a 4+, they will ignore it. I'm just going to leave that number 3 dice next to them or near them so I can remember. For my opponent's half of the shooting phase, first shot is going to be this model into this model, looking at a 2 to hit. Rerolling? No, not rerolling because they're a noble. Ooh, okay, that's interesting. My opponent's local hero here is going to fire into my Thief. Now, they are within 4, but they have moved, so essentially those two will cancel each other out, meaning they're hitting on their regular 3. Which they do, rolling to wound. Which they don't, because it's only damage 3 for the bow. Next, my opponent's Skirmisher is going to throw all 3 of their throwing knives into my Hunter here. They will need 4s, because while they're within 4 inches, take it down to 2s, I do get the benefit of hard cover. So they've hit with all 3, so now they're going to roll to wound. And re-roll that 6, unfortunately. So I get 1 wound in total. Last bit of conventional shooting from my opponent before they get round to their concoctions. They're actually going to fire this model here into my Thief, so Marksperson into Thief. They will need a 6, however, because there is hard cover and movement in the way, and unfortunately, no, they've missed. And then to finish off, my opponent is going to use a concoction from their Apprentice, which is going to go into my Hunter. So it's the number 3 Numbing Icicle. On a 2+, it will go off. So it does. So we're just going to pop that number 3 next to the wound counter for them. So that means that they will actually, good point, they will take a damage 2 hit. So my opponent's going to roll for that first of all, which will wound on a 5 or 6. Which it does. And then on top of that, they are now combat skill and shoot skill 6 for the rest of the turn. Now, normally some models that would be a bit of a bad drop. Unfortunately, to the Hunter, his combat skill is actually a 2. So he is now currently on 6. So he's gone from being the highest chance of hitting to the lowest. So first things first, my Cultist here, if I can get him, is going to charge into my opponent's ex-soldier like that. So remember, he's got that number 3 for resolving the wounds. So he has 1 attack, hitting on a 4, which doesn't. My opponent has 2 attacks hitting on 3s, both of which do, and then they're looking at damage 4 against resistance 3, so it's 3s and more to wound. So that is 6 in total. No, it's not 6 in total, that's 3 in total, because this would go up to a 6 and this would go up to a 4. So I'm going to roll and see if I can stop them with my shield. No, I don't stop any of them, so that is him removed. And he gets to go 5 inches. With that, my opponent has decided to stay in this corner here. Next, I'm actually going to do a blind charge from this model here into my opponent's Skirmisher. So let's see if I can get it on a 3. Yes, I can on a 3+. With that, they're going to go around like that. And then with the, yeah, they can easily get into base contact. 1 attack from my Mercenary, hitting on a 4. Rerolling for being a Mercenary, which hits. Oops. Rolling to wound, damage 3, resistance 3. It is a wound, so my opponent's Skirmisher takes 1 single wound, and then gets to attack back. 1 attack with a dagger hitting on a 3, wounding on a 5 or 6, which it does. It's only a single wound, however, because it's a dagger. And I fail my save as well. So, oddly enough, we've caused 1 wound each. So we actually refight the combat. We have another round. So I'll go first. Hits. Wounds, so my opponent goes up to 2. And they're looking at attacking back, hitting on a 3. No, so they run away on a 2+, which they do. And then I'm going to roll to see where I go. 2 inches. I'm actually going to go... With my 2 inches, I'm actually going to go this way to here, like that. So my opponent is going to charge their ex-soldier into my hunter. So they get 2 attacks, hitting on 3s. 1 hits, looking at a... Ooh, what are we looking at? It's damage 4 for them against resistance 3. Okay, so there's no wounds there. I would have been hitting normally on a 2, however, due to my opponent's Icicle, I am hitting on a 6. Which I still do. Damage 5 for being armed with a great weapon against resistance 4. So that is a regular wound on my opponent, so on a 3+ they can back away. Which they do, so they're just going to back away into the corner. And then I'll roll a 5. I'm just going to kind of stand. No, I'm going to go around to here. Should be able to get around to being just there. Next, my opponent is going to charge in here with their Noble. 1 attack, hitting on a 3. Fails to hit. I have 1 attack hitting on a 4, which hits. Looking for a 6 to wound, however, with a dagger against their resistance. No, so I fail, but I back away. Yes, I do. So I back away to there. And then my opponent gets to roll, see where they go. 3 inches. So I'm guessing, yeah, back into the corner. Next, my opponent's local hero is going to run round like this, and they're actually going to go there because that's the best place they can stand while remaining away from him, but able to push me back if they win. So they have 1 attack hitting on a 3, which they don't. So I have 1 attack hitting on a... Oh, it's a 5 with a thief. Nope. And do I run away on a 2+? Yes. And I'm going to use that to back away towards that wall, and my opponent's going to roll a 6. So what we'll do is we'll come back to you once they've decided. So with that, my opponent ends up here behind this barricade. Next, my opponent's Marksperson is going to charge into my Mercenary. So they have 1 attack hitting on a 4, which does, rolling to wound, which doesn't, so I have 1 attack myself hitting back, which doesn't, I roll away on a 3+. Oh, I'll roll that again. Which I do, so I'm going to scoot back to there, because that's 2 inches away. And my opponent gets to go 1 inch, so I'm guessing is just going to sort of... Okay, I'm going to go there. Next, my opponent is going to charge in their Apprentice with actually, I think, their last charge. So they're just going to charge them in like so.
No, actually, yeah, just straight away. Yeah.
And then they are going to roll 1 dice with their attack, hitting on a 3. No, so I retaliate. I hit, roll to wound. No, so do I back away on a 3+? Yes, I do. I'm going to back away into that tent. My opponent's going to roll and get a 5. So that's us at the end of turn 3. As we're about to go into turn 4, as we can see, it's kind of all shifting kind of into one line down this side here. What I'm also going to do is take away the numbing icicle because it's now the end of the turn and that has now finished. Start of turn 4, very first bit, I'm going to do my determination because I have 3 models out. I'll roll that again because that's not good. Okay, so it stays a 5 and I pass my determination. Next we come to the initiative phase. My opponent rolls a 2. I roll turn 4 in a row. Actually, no, in this case, for once, it's the other way round. So my opponent is going first, and I'm going second with a reaction token. And here we are at the end of turn 4's movement phase. So what I've done is tried to move up and rush as much as I can into my opponent's Alchemist zone from either side here, whereas my opponent has tried to capitalise on trying to get around to my Hunter, but with them going first and me going second, I think I've actually tried to counter out their move. We've also got this still going on up here, and then finally we've got my Brawler popping around on this side. Turn 4 shooting phase, my opponent is going to start it off with the Skirmisher into my Brawler. So they're going to do 2 first of all, because they might actually take them out with the first 2. Hitting on 2s, because I have no cover and it's short range, both hit. Rolling to wound. Okay, so I take a wound, and then my opponent's going to throw the 3rd knife in there, I'm guessing, which doesn't even hit. Next bit, my opponent's Noble is going to fire into my guy. It's a 2 to hit, which they do. Rolling to wound, which they do. It's only a single wound, however. Next, my opponent is going to fire this shot from their Marksperson into my Hunter. They can just see them, but it is hard cover. So it's going to be a 6 because they've moved as well. Rerolling for being a Marksperson. No, not high enough. The last bit for some concoctions is going to be from the Alchemist, or actually from the Apprentice, to here is going to be a number 4 Ice Wall. Looking for a 2+ for it to go off. And it does, so I'm just going to quickly switch that out for that. Coming over to myself for my shooting phase, or my part of the shooting phase, this Marksperson here is within 4 of the Alchemist, so even though they've got heavy cover or hard cover and I move with a crossbow, it would be a 7, but I'm super short range, so it goes down to being a 6 and is just possible. No, I miss. Next we're going to keep this between the Marksperson and the Noble going, so I get a hit, hopefully get that again. I don't, but I do get a wound on them. Last bit of shooting, or last bit in the shooting phase for myself, is my Doctrine, which I'm going to use Sage's Advice, see if it goes off on a 2+. It does, so I get to pick 2 models within 9 inches, which is going to be this one and this one. I'm just going to mark them up for now. So for the rest of the turn, when they disengage from a combat, instead of rolling a dice, it's simply automatic. They just simply leave the combat if they have to. So my opponent's first charge was going to be the ex-soldier who's hiding in here into my Hunter. However, they are going to use their reaction token, and they are going to go 3 inches like that. I think that should be 3 inches. Yep, that's a full 3 inches from where they were. So we did actually work this out, that means they would not be able to reach me in close combat. Next, my opponent has decided that their Apprentice here is going to charge, and they can by going to here, over the wall, and then just getting in with the last little bit of their remaining charge. So they're looking at 1 attack, hitting on a 3, which does, rolling to wound, which also does, gets a single wound. Oh, I actually have to add 1 to the stack. Then I get to retaliate with my great weapon. Let's see if it does something. It hits. Damage 5 with the great weapon against resistance 3, so it's going to be +2 to whatever I roll. That is a 2, so that would actually be a single wound on my opponent's Apprentice, and that means we fight again. So my opponent's surprisingly happy about this, but they're going to roll to see what happens. Hitting on a 3, which they do, rolling to wound, which they do as well, so that is the Hunter removed and all their Doctrines go with them. So my opponent's going to roll now to see what they get. A 5, so they get to move 5 inches. Well, that's a 6, I knocked it. And with that, my opponent has moved there. So next, my opponent is going to blind charge, or try and blind charge, with this model here into my guy hiding out the back there, which they do because their intelligence is quite high. So they're just going to move in like so, and have 1 attack hitting on a 4 with their basic weapon, which doesn't hit with no rerolls. I have 1 attack hitting on a 4 with my basic weapon. It hits, it wounds, so my opponent's going to run away on a 2+, which they do, so they're just going to back themselves away a couple of inches, and then I'm going to roll a 5, so I'm actually going to use that to go to here for 2, and then jump in for 3 to make the full 5. Next, my opponent's Marksperson, my Marksperson is going to be charged by my opponent's Noble. So you're just going to move in like that so you can push him further back. 1 attack. It hits, rolling to wound. It doesn't wound, so I attack back. I get a hit. I don't get a wound. Do I run away on a 2+? I'll roll that again. I do, so best I can do is sort of back into this corner like that, and then my opponent gets to roll, and they get to move 6 inches, so I'm guessing, yep, back into the same corner. So my opponent has decided for their last charge, this Skirmisher is going to go round. He can go through his friend, but he just can't remain next to him when he finishes up. So he's going to go here and attack into my Brawler in such a way that he can push him back, or push these models back should they win. So I have 1 attack hitting on a 3, which hits, wounding on a 5 or 6 because it's only a dagger. We'll roll that again, and unfortunately it's a fail. So I have 2 attacks back from the Brawler, hitting on 3s. 1 hit, 5 and 6, because it is daggers. No, but I do have the automatic disengage, so I don't need to roll. And then my opponent rolls a 6. So with that, they're going to, not quite there, but they're going to block by standing an inch away from that Alchemist. So first bit of charging from myself, Brawler is going to run actually around and charge like that into my opponent's Apprentice. There's a reason for that, but we'll see if I can get the hits in. 1 hit again. I'll roll that again. No, it's not enough to wound, so my opponent gets to attack back. They hit, rolling to wound. I re-roll mine, so they'll re-roll theirs. Nope, it's still the same, so that's a critical, and that's me removed. Next, my Thief is going to charge into the Apprentice. 1 attack, hitting on a 5. Nope, my opponent gets to attack back, hitting on a 3. Which they do, rolling to wound. Which they don't, so they have to disengage on a 3+. Which they don't. I don't hit, so they get to disengage again. Which they do, so they can just move back 2 inches. Pretty much about there. And then I get to go 6, but in reality that 6 is actually just going to be to move as close as possible, like that. Then we have my Marksperson into my opponent's Skirmisher. 1 attack with his basic weapon in this case, hitting on a 4. Hits, rolling to wound. Nope, fails to wound, so my opponent gets to attack back. 1 attack that does hit, 5 and 6 to wound. So they don't get a wound, but on 2+ they disengage, which they do, and I get a feeling they're going to disengage, closer towards the door. And then I get to go 6 inches, which is going to be there. Last charge for myself, just because of how things have gone in this turn, is going to be Mercenary is going to charge into, I'll put that there, into my opponent's Alchemist. So I have 1 attack hitting on a 4, which hits. Try again. Gets a wound, so my opponent's Alchemist does take a wound. I'll mark them up. And then my opponent gets to attack back with 1 attack hitting on a 3, which it does, rolling to wound on a damage 3 resistance 3, which they do, and I ignore it with my shield. So my opponent's running away on a 2+, which they are. So they're just going to back away, out that way, and then away from their own model. And then I'm going to go, just going to go like that and block them from going out that window. So with that, we come to the end of turn 4. So we're just about to go into turn 5, where I'll need to do my determination. As for my opponent, I still see they haven't lost any models, so they won't need to do theirs, but we'll see how mine goes. Coming into turn 5, first thing we have to start off with is my determination. Now, same with a hunter as with losing an alchemist, I have to now roll 2 dice and pick the worst. It doesn't matter if I reroll that 6 into anything, the 3 is enough to remove my Marksperson and put him there. And to be perfectly honest, with that, I'm just going to call the game there, because I have a couple of models over here that aren't really going to achieve anything, and my opponent hasn't lost a single model up to this point. Even as soon as we went to turn 6, I'd probably automatically fail the determination at this point. So it just wouldn't be much point in continuing on and just seeing models get removed off the table for the sake of it. So with that, we have actually come to the end of the battle report. As I said there, I've decided to end it prematurely because it wasn't, like I say, I'd lost so many models. I lost 6 out of my 10 models and my opponent hadn't lost a single one. There just wasn't really the opportunity for me to get any more wounds on their Alchemist, even if we played it out. And they also had the Glacial Shield, which they could now potentially get off from their Apprentice to their Alchemist, making it even harder. Just the odds weren't really in my favour in this case, and that's just what happens in games like this. So, as you can see, that is the Hunters against the Council of the Cold Knight, with the Council of the Cold Knight winning. If you're looking to get access to the rules and also get your name at the beginning of the video, as you would have seen right at the start, then you can sign up on Patreon. If you sign up at the Scoundrel level, you will get access to exclusive extra videos and also be accepted into the group that we use on Discord for the discussion of the game. If you join at the local hero tier, you will get access to rules for solo play, for regular play and campaign play. You will also get access to the rules that would actually govern how to use the Hunters in your games, how to also do additional things within the game, such as with changes to the campaign and the solo play. And then on top of that, you would also get access to a number of tools and things that you can use to make playing the game easier, like an editable campaign roster. And then finally, there is the local hero tier, where you would actually get everything that would come in the novice tier and in the scoundrel tier. And then on top of that, you would get access to a specific section where you can add in your names and details that you would like to give to models we use in the campaign. And you would also get access to other sneak previews and get access to rules first and various other things before those in the other tiers. All that remains to say after that is thank you very much for watching from my opponent behind the camera and myself. I almost did to myself first. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in the next battle report next weekend. Patrons, if you've managed to get up to this point in the video, you will be getting an extra video during the week because there is not a campaign post video that we would normally put up instead.